Welcome to the Be That Healing Girl podcast. And on this episode today, we're going to talk about why acting unbothered isn't working with relationship anxiety, okay? And I know this I'm unbothered act so well. I used to be the cool girlfriend, no big deal. I'm low maintenance. And that was causing major problems, not just in my marriage and when Craig and I first started dating, but this was a pattern that continued. I mean, as far as back as I can remember, just being in relationships. So if you are the kind of girly that is your schedule's so busy and yeah, no big deal and you do you, but really deep down you are not okay, then this is the episode for you. Not only is this the episode for you, but this whole podcast might be for you. And if you're new here, my name is Claire. I'm a relationship coach and I love helping girlies who slay in their careers, whether you have letters behind your name, or you are an entrepreneur and you're in real estate, or maybe you're a mom, that's a way to slay, then you're in the right place. And at the same time, you might be slaying in those areas. You might be sucking at keeping it together with your relationship anxiety, anxious attachment in relationships. So if that is you, you're with the right crew, honey. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And I, again, just know this really well. And I have also something exciting that's going to help you coming in January 2025. I'll tell you more about that in a second. But let me just start by saying that acting unbothered was my jam. I could act unbothered and like nothing was bothering me, but really deep down things were. And when I think back at the relationship that I would say where he was the most unavailable emotionally and WTF. And when I look back at, I would absolutely say the relationships that I quote unquote blame the most, this would be the one. When I look back, that was my thing. I would just pretend like everything was no big deal. So one of the things that was kind of going on as far as the dynamic in the relationship was we both worked at the same place. And so we saw each other all the time, every day. But at the same time, his schedule, he was a football coach. And at the time, he was coaching high school, but now he's in the NFL coaching. And so he definitely had these big desires and big passions and dreams around being a coach. And I, in fact, love that about him. And fast forward even more, looking back, he was also working a lot. So he was working full time. He was a coach. So he would work in the morning. He would go to the high school to go coach and he'd go back to work. And then on top of that, so really it was like a 12-hour day. And then on top of that, to make extra money on the side, he would be a bouncer at some of the local bars around town. And it was really just easy money. And I made it my thing to never bring it up. I had this story in my mind that what he was doing mattered because also that was what attracted me to him. I love that he had this passion. And I really made it a thing to just never, if he said he had to go work at the club or whatever, I just never ever said anything around it. And I was just so cool and so low maintenance. In fact, I remember this is like way before being high maintenance or having needs was a thing. I thought that was the honorable thing to do. I thought that in relationship that to completely say, oh, you do you and that's fine. When in reality, when I look back, it wasn't from a place of wholeness and groundedness and centeredness. It was coming from a place of deep insecurity. I felt like if I didn't let them and him do whatever he wanted, then I wasn't valuable enough. I wasn't good enough just by being who I was to actually have presence and truth and being genuine in my relationship. So that was just one example of the dynamic that was going on. And one thing that I learned from that relationship and continue to learn is acting unbothered is going to really hurt your relationship. And one of the tactics that I used to use a lot was being busy. How many of you are out there that love looking at your calendar and it's full? Okay. And this was a thing for me. And then I had this thing called burnout. I was burnt out. Okay. And so now I have reshifted. I used to love looking at my calendar and seeing, oh my gosh, I have this call and this thing. And my goal now is to have as much empty space for my creativity as I possibly frickin' can. It's the total opposite. And one of the things that I would do when I would act unbothered, and what would usually fall through the cracks, or the defense that I had up would start to fall apart, was when I was not busy. And if you're like me and busy was or is your thing, then at a certain point you're just exhausted. Okay, you're just exhausted because you're so freaking busy, and you're filling up your life because you are unbothered, but really you're just busy. And then you get home, and at night you're sitting there with the sheets like by your chin, freaking the F out because really you haven't done the deeper thing. Okay, so that's a problem. The other thing that I noticed was a really big deal was that me acting unbothered was exactly that. It was an act. It was a charade. It was a smokescreen. It was not real. And the problem with acting unbothered was that it wasn't authentic. I was being fake. Ooh, gosh. And I am an elder millennial, and saying that F word, woo, it brings up some stuff for me, not gonna lie. And so being fake for me was really not, didn't feel good. It wasn't something that I was proud of. And I know that looking back now, that the more that I was not being authentic, the more ingenuine I was part of the reason why that relationship fell apart, because I wasn't actually being myself. I was pretending to be something that I actually wasn't. And one of the things that I know in healing, and not just from going from acting unbothered to truly wholeheartedly being unbothered, no matter what my partner is doing, no matter where they're going, it doesn't matter what they're scrolling about on the internet, who they're texting, I don't care, is that I was really intentional. And one of the ways that I healed from acting unbothered to truly being unbothered was understanding that sharing is caring. Like a care bear stare. That one of the many things that we can do in a relationship is actually sharing from a place of wholeness, from being regulated, from being authentic, and from being honest. And I got really intentional, and I would absolutely say the past few years in my spiritual journey has been dedicated to sharing and being authentic in that way. And another thing that I noticed in this whole acting unbothered thing, which would also make me word vomit, because at a certain point you can't act unbothered because you are bothered, it's going to come out. But instead of just word vomiting, one of the things I got really intentional about was how to self-reveal. Now, that is very different than just blurting out all the things that you're feeling because they've been bottled up, but really making it a practice on revealing myself as things come up, and revealing what my true emotions are, and showing and communicating to my partner what is actually happening on the inside. And one of the things that I got really intentional was not waiting for the thing to happen, for the fight to happen, to then just reveal it all. But one of the things that I really mastered, and if you've listened to the podcast with Craig and I maybe you can tell, but we got really intentional. I got really intentional with sharing regularly what was really going on for me deep down inside. It became not just this thing that happened every 2 weeks, which in the cycle of our anxious attachment and his avoidant attachment was like, it was a cycle. I mean, like literally we could probably set our clocks to, okay, have a great weekend. Monday, starting to worry a little bit. Tuesday, okay, really worried. Wednesday, I'm starting to like pick at things. I'm telling you, it was a cycle. And so one of the things I've done intentionally to stop that cycle is to really make it a practice every day. It's part of my day-to-day life that I am noticing, I am registering, I'm revealing, and sharing in a healthy way. So this is one of the ways that we can start to actually be unbothered. And it's also important to know that the act is the act, honey. Okay, you can't steal from a thief over here. So when I get on session with clients, I can tell right away when it's like, no, nothing's wrong. Like, you ain't fooling nobody. Okay, and that's one of the things I love about just the work that I do. It's how, if you can't be honest with yourself around, are you actually bothered? And a lot of times, the thing that I heal in with clients, whether that's in the Healing Girl Gang or one-on-one, is actually being able to articulate and understand the underlying emotions that are going on. Because if you don't have a good understanding of what's happening inside or have language around your own emotions, you're certainly not going to be able to articulate that to somebody else. And so that's why we act unbothered. It's actually not because we don't want to say anything, we don't know how to. So that's something that I know that you might be struggling with, then you're in the right spot, honey. And the Healing Girl Gang might be a great place for that. Speaking of Healing Girl Gang, I've got the mailbox. And one of the fun things about the Healing Girl Gang, besides the fact that we have monthly trainings every month, we kick off with the masterclass, which is the education, and then we go into the next week, which is implementation and the action taker toolkit, which is literally one of the things I'm really big on is experiential learning through systematic and tangible action step by step. So literally, this is one of the fun things, many of the fun things that we do in the Healing Girl Gang, and we also have the mailbox. So I love these because I just get to riff. Okay, so Kara submitted a hotline question, and she wants to give a brief overview of the relationship dynamics. So 2 years together, 3-month-old together, own and operate a business together. All right, so you guys are really in each other's business. I totally get that. Craig and I live on the road, and we're around each other a lot. So both work from home for now. He's getting a co-working space soon to create some separation. Her, anxious. Him, avoidant. Both mother wounds. Who doesn't have a mother wound? Get in line. Go get you some. All right. So we really care about each other and want to create a healthy and happy family relationship. But we struggle to communicate with each other in a way that reaches a mutual understanding. There's always a point in the conversation where our guards are put up and one or both of us or both of our egos begin to take over the conversation. There's a lot of fear of intimate love on both ends, and instability of our fights, pursue, withdraw dynamic has created a lack of safety. Personally, I'm trying to figure out how I can develop a pattern. Remember when I'm triggered by my partner's behavior to ask him more questions to clarify if the story I'm interpreting about his behavior is accurate or if it's me projecting my fear and insecurities. I tend to attach an insecure meaning to his behavior, and he feels misunderstood, seen, because it wasn't his intention. I find when I am more grounded in logic and stoic and asking these questions, I lose my happy-go-lucky, lovey energy. I'm trying to figure out how to be caught up in the attachment love and heart wide open, yet detached enough to witness my trigger and challenge it with thoughtful questions. Okay, so what I love about Kara, and I'm sure most of you are probably feeling this, she kind of knows her stuff. And P.S., this is like the client that I love working with the most. So I'm going to also say you gave a lot of background, but again, one of the things to understand about relationship, and I try my best to be, not try, I do my best to answer questions with the limited information that I actually have. And these are just words on a screen. If you have ever had coaching from me, whether it's in the Healing Girl Gang or just like in a setting like that, is energy is everything. Energy is everything. The words on the screen only tell just a tiny bit of actually what's going on. And not only that, so words on screen only give me a piece of it, but the other thing to know is that relationships are multidimensional. I mean, you are 3D, like you are a live person, and you have history and you have circumstances that are unique to you. And not only that, but your partner does too. And then you bring these two beings together, and it's totally different. So I just want to address the first thing that just gut hit me right away is how can I develop a pattern, remember when I'm triggered by my partner's behavior, to ask him more clear questions to clarify. Okay, so first of all, the reason why this is not working is that to me, this feels like systematically treating the trigger and trying to overpower the trigger. Okay, that's just like the vibe that I'm getting, where trying to out-strategize the trigger. Okay, you can't out-strategize a trigger. You just can't. I mean, you can try, but you can't outwill the subconscious. I'll repeat that again. You cannot outwill your subconscious. And that is the common thing. This is why it sounds like, to me, this is pretty exhausting. It feels frustrating because you're trying to use paper towels to push against the tide. And so when we try to out-strategize, and I got to do it right, and we're having these triggers, that kind of mechanism to get it right, that kind of mechanism to like, okay, I got to like hold my shit together, and that white knuckling it in that moment of the trigger is actually part of the problem. So I can understand where you are feeling frustrated in this. And initially, when I was reading the second paragraph here, that's what I was coming up with. So ask him more questions to clarify. And, one thing that I would invite for you, instead of asking him questions, the real person you want to be asking is yourself questions. Like, what is happening for me? What's going on for me? Because a lot of this seems like what can I ask him? How do I get him to change? How do I get him to open up? And I'm not saying there's not a place for that, but none of that is going to work unless you're asking these questions around your trigger, around yourself. One of the things that is so important to understand about triggers is that the triggers is a clue. They're a clue to something deeper. And in some way, I'm a sick person, but like, I love a trigger because that's the invitation to look internally. And a lot of this, and I can tell, Kara, you are smart. Like, this is also like, welcome to the club. All right. This is like the overachiever, perfectionistic, we're doing it kind of girlies club. If you're in the Healing Girl Gang, you're on my page, you're listening to the podcast. And you're smart. And again, I think this is exactly where you're getting caught up, is like, how do I outsmart the trigger? How do I get past it when all of that is just kind of more of the same? And you can ask any of my clients, you can look on the stories and see client results, but like, this isn't about working harder or figuring out a different way to attack it. And like, what can I develop a pattern, or what reminder can I have? What's the sticky note? When in reality, this is a deepening. So I know that sounds strange too, because that seems so foreign, and different isn't bad. It's just different. It's probably something that you haven't tried yet. This is also why a lot of my clients, like if you listen to the Athena episode, really have good at intellectualizing. I mean, you're obviously, just by your language here, you're good at getting in the brain and figuring out a strategy, but it doesn't work that way in relationship. So that would be my suggestion. And then one of the last thing that I'll say is, you said, I find when I'm more grounded in the logic and stoic and asking these questions, you lose your happy-go-lucky, loving energy. And so, yeah, I mean, because then again, it sounds like you're not, you might be trying to white knuckle it and to be grounded and to be regulated, and trying to be regulated dysregulates you. I know, I'm telling you, it's bananas. It's when you start to understand how these dynamics play out, the more you try to relax, the more you try to be less anxious, inherently in that wrestling match, you actually create more anxiety. So a lot of this is going to sound strange. It's less about the strategy and more about the surrender. The surrender. I know. So that's what I have to say about that, without knowing more of the detail and actually what's your process in that moment, like what's happening. But I think these are good starting off points for you. And speaking of just actually being more grounded instead of trying to be grounded, one of the things I'm excited for in 2025 is on January 1st, we are doing a glow up challenge, honey, relationship glow up challenge. So this is something like a free, it's totally free. And it's something that I'm really excited to roll out because, hello, January, it's going to be a short little sprint. And these are all things that I myself am recommitting to in 2025 because, again, I love deepening my relationship with myself and my partnership with everyone. And I'm going to go back to basics. So Glow Up Challenge, Relationship Challenge 2025 is coming. It's totally free. You're going to get emails for 7 days. I cannot wait. We all want to glow up for 2025, don't we? All right, you'll see I'll put the link in the show notes. It'll also be floating around in all my links and social, so check it out. All right, angels, I love you. Mwah.